The great hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with the sounds of 1,000 different voices. Ambassador Kyung-ho adjusted his breathing mask and watched the chaos unfold before him. Representatives from 47 different species argued about trade routes, mining rights, and border disputes. It was just another day at the Galactic Council. Kyung-ho was old now, even by Altarian standards. His blue-scaled skin had faded to silver, and his 3 eyes moved slowly as they tracked the speakers. He was one of the few beings in the hall who remembered the humans. Most of the younger delegates had never even heard of them. The Vorthak Empire demands compensation for the destroyed cargo ships, Admiral Sujin was saying from the speaker's platform. Her species looked like walking crystals, all sharp angles and reflecting light. The pirates came from the neutral zone again. Pirates are not our responsibility, replied a delegate from the Kelth system. His voice came through a translator box since his species communicated through chemical sense. Police your own trade routes. Kyung-ho barely listened to the familiar arguments. His mind wandered to the report sitting on his desk back in his quarters. 3 deep space monitoring stations had detected strange energy readings near the galaxy's edge. The energy signatures matched old human technology from 50 years ago. He had tried to bring this up at previous council meetings, but no one wanted to hear about humans anymore. They were gone, dead, lost to whatever dangers lurked in the dark spaces between stars. Good riddance, most species thought. Dr. Dong-woo caught his attention as she approached his seat. The crystalline scientist's faceted body sparkled under the chamber's lights. Kyung-ho, I need to speak with you after the session. About your energy readings. You believe they're significant? More than significant. Disturbing. Her voice carried harmonics that made other delegates turn to look. I've been studying the old human colonies. Something doesn't add up. The session dragged on for another 3 hours. Finally, the council leader called for a recess. Kyung-ho followed Dong-woo to a quiet corner where she activated a privacy field. Show me what you found, he said. Dong-woo projected a holographic map showing the former human territories. Red dots marked their old colonies, now empty worlds slowly returning to nature. Look at the evacuation patterns. Every human world shows signs of planned departure, not emergency escape. What do you mean? Infrastructure was carefully dismantled. Valuable materials were removed. Even the graves were emptied. Her crystalline form shifted colors as she spoke, a sign of agitation. This wasn't a species fleeing in panic. This was organized. Kyung-ho studied the data. But why would they leave? The humans were expanding faster than any species in galactic history. Their jump gate network was growing by dozens of worlds each year. That's exactly what bothers me. They were successful, aggressive, curious, then one day they just stopped. All communication ended. All expansion halted. Within 5 years, every human world was empty. The Council's official position is that they encountered something beyond their capabilities and were destroyed. Dong-woo's form flashed bright red. Then where are the bodies? Where are the ruined cities? Where are their ships? Before Kyung-ho could answer, an alarm began sounding throughout the chamber. The deep, resonant tone meant only one thing: incoming priority. Message from Deep Space Council Leader Thex-9 activated the main communication array. A holographic image appeared showing Commander Velkata of the Outer Rim Monitoring Station. The insectoid officer's mandibles clicked nervously. Council members, we have a situation. 3 hours ago, our long-range sensors detected massive gravitational disturbances approaching from the galactic core region. Define massive, Admiral Sujin commanded. The objects they're larger than planets. Multiple contacts moving in formation at superluminal speeds. Estimated arrival at the outer systems in 72 hours. The chamber fell silent. Kyung-ho felt his blood chill. Objects larger than planets coming from the direction the humans had been exploring before they vanished. Are they ships? Someone asked. Unknown. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. But Velkata paused, his compound eyes reflecting uncertainty. Some of the readings are similar to old human technology signatures. Panic began spreading through the chamber. Delegates started talking over each other, demanding answers no one had. Kyung-ho noticed that Dongwoo had gone completely transparent, her species' response to extreme shock. "That's impossible," Admiral Soo-jin declared. "The humans are extinct. We confirmed this decades ago." "Did we?" Kyung-ho stood up slowly, his age making the movement difficult. "Or did we just assume they were dead, because it was easier than wondering where they went?" "You're suggesting an extinct species has somehow returned with planet-sized spacecraft?" Council Leader Thex 9's mechanical voice carried clear skepticism. "I'm suggesting we never confirmed they were extinct in the first place." Kyung-ho activated his own holographic display, showing the energy readings his stations had detected. "These signatures have been appearing for weeks, faint at first but growing stronger. Something big is coming." Dongwoo recovered enough to speak again. "If the humans are returning, we need to ask ourselves why they left in the first place. What did they find out there that made them abandon everything they had built?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. For 50 years, the galaxy had enjoyed peace and stability. Trade flowed freely through the old human jump gates, which still functioned even without their creators. No major wars had erupted. No new threats had emerged from the dark spaces between stars. Maybe that peace had been bought with humanity's sacrifice. Commander Velkata's image flickered as another alarm sounded at his station. "Council members, we're getting new readings. The objects are decelerating. Whatever they are, they're going to drop out of faster-than-light travel soon." "Which system?" Admiral Soo-jin asked. "None of them. They're stopping in empty space, roughly 10 light-years from the nearest inhabited world. It's as if they're waiting." Kyung-ho felt a chill run down his spine. Waiting. Not attacking, not communicating, just waiting. That sounded very human. They had always been patient when they needed to be, strategic in ways that made other species uncomfortable. "We need to prepare a first contact team," Council Leader Thex 9 announced. "If these are indeed humans returning, we must handle this carefully." "And if they're not humans?" someone called out. The question no one wanted to answer hung in the chamber air. If planet-sized objects were coming from the direction the humans had vanished, and if those objects carried something else entirely, then the galaxy might be facing its greatest threat in millions of years. Kyung-ho looked around the chamber, at the frightened faces of dozens of species. All of them had grown comfortable in the humans' absence. All of them had forgotten that sometimes disappearing was just another way of preparing for war. The first human vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel with the force of a falling star. Space itself seemed to bend around the massive structure as it decelerated, sending gravitational waves rippling across 3 star systems. On monitoring stations throughout the sector, electronic equipment failed and backup systems scrambled to compensate for the impossible readings. Captain Min-ho stood on what he still called a bridge, though the command center of his vessel bore little resemblance to the ships of 50 years ago. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, he could see the curve of his ship's hull stretching beyond the horizon. The vessel was roughly the size of Earth's moon, but unlike any moon that had ever existed, its surface bristled with structures that defied easy description. Towers that seemed to fold in on themselves, energy conduits that pulsed with colors that had no names, and defensive systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. This was not just a ship. It was a mobile world, home to nearly 1 billion human souls. "Sir, we're receiving communication requests from 47 different sources," reported Commander Jin-woo from his station. The tactical officer looked young, but Min-ho knew he had been born aboard this vessel and had never set foot on a planet. "The Galactic Council is demanding immediate identification." "Open a channel to Nexus Prime," Min-ho ordered. "Let's reintroduce ourselves to our old neighbors." The communication array activated, its signal strong enough to reach across interstellar distances in real time. Min-ho straightened his uniform, still recognizably human despite 50 years of isolation and evolution, and began his prepared speech. "This is Captain Min-ho of the human vessel New Horizon, addressing the Galactic Council. We have returned to settle some unfinished business." On Nexus Prime, the council chamber fell into absolute silence. Ambassador Kyung-ho felt his three hearts beating at different rhythms as he stared at the human captain's image. The man looked human enough. 2 eyes, brown hair, the familiar stubborn set to his jaw that Kyung-ho remembered from decades past. But there was something different about him. Something that spoke of experiences beyond normal understanding. Captain Min-ho, Council Leader Thex-9's mechanical voice carried across space with barely concealed shock. Our records show humanity vanishing from galactic civilization 50 years ago. We assumed your species was extinct. Min-ho's expression didn't change. Reports of our death were greatly exaggerated. We didn't vanish, we consolidated. Consolidated? Admiral Soo-jin interrupted. What do you mean? The camera view pulled back to show more of the vessel's interior. The council members gasped as they realized the true scale of what they were seeing. Entire cities stretched across the ship's inner surface, connected by transport systems that moved through what appeared to be folded space. Gardens and lakes occupied areas that would have housed entire planets' worth of population. We abandoned our scattered colonies and combined our resources, Min-ho explained calmly. This vessel houses the population of 12 former human worlds. We have 47 more ships of similar size. Engineer So Young appeared beside the captain, her hands still dirty from working on incomprehensible machinery. We've been busy, she said with a grin that somehow managed to be both friendly and terrifying. Dr. Dongwoo, watching from the council chamber, felt her crystalline form cycling through colors of confusion and fear. How is this possible? The energy requirements alone. We learned new physics, So Young replied, somehow hearing the question across interstellar space. When you're running for your lives, you get creative about energy sources. We harvest power directly from quantum vacuum fluctuations now. Matter isn't as permanent as you think it is. Running for your lives from what? Kyung-ho asked the question that everyone was thinking. Captain Min-ho's expression grew serious. That's a conversation we need to have in person. But not here, not in open space. Too dangerous. He paused, looking directly into the camera. We need to meet somewhere secure. Somewhere shielded. Shielded from what? Admiral Soo-jin demanded. From things that listen in the dark between stars. From entities that feed on civilized worlds. From the reason the Forerunners really disappeared. The mention of the Forerunners sent a chill through every species in the chamber. The ancient civilization that had vanished millions of years ago, leaving only ruins and cryptic warnings scattered across the galaxy. Most species considered them a myth, or at best a cautionary tale about the dangers of advancement. The Forerunners are a legend, Council Leader Thex-9 stated firmly. No, they're not. A new voice joined the conversation as President Na-young appeared on screen. She was clearly human, but something about her seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Her edges flickered occasionally, as if she was broadcasting from multiple dimensions at once. We found their archives, she continued. We found their warnings. We found out what they were really trying to protect the galaxy from, and we discovered that their protections are failing. On Nexus Prime, emergency sessions began convening in side chambers. Military commanders checked their defensive systems while scientists desperately tried to analyze the impossible readings coming from the human fleet. Meanwhile, the humans waited patiently in space, their massive vessels making no threatening moves but serving as undeniable proof that the galaxy had changed. Historian Yu Jin joined the conversation from somewhere deep within the human ship. Her appearance was even more unsettling than the others. She looked ancient despite appearing young, as if she had seen things that aged the soul rather than the body. 50 years ago, our deep space explorers found Forerunner ruins beyond the Galactic Rim, she explained. Not the sanitized monuments you found in civilized space are the real thing. Their final installations, complete with intact data cores and functioning artificial intelligences. You awakened Forerunner AI? Admiral Soo-jin's crystalline form flashed danger colors. That's forbidden by every treaty. It was necessary, President Na-young replied calmly. When you learn that your entire galaxy is a protected zone, that the spaces between galaxies are full of things that hunt civilizations for food, you make difficult choices. The communication suddenly cut to static. On every human vessel, defense systems activated automatically as something vast and hungry stirred in the darkness between stars. The humans' return had not gone unnoticed by older, more terrible things. Captain Minho's voice returned, tense with urgency. Council members, we need to meet immediately. Our presence here has accelerated the timeline. They know we're back, and they're coming to investigate. Who's coming? Kyung-ho asked, though he already feared the answer. The things that ate the Forerunners, Engineer So-young replied grimly. And they're always hungry. The communication ended abruptly, leaving the Galactic Council staring at empty space where the human captain's image had been. Outside, in the cold darkness between stars, sensors began detecting new movement. Things that didn't exist entirely, in normal space, approaching from directions that shouldn't have been possible. Humanity had returned, but they hadn't come home. They had come back to fight a war that the rest of the galaxy didn't even know had started. The emergency meeting took place aboard the human vessel New Horizon, in a conference chamber that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Ambassador Kyung-ho found the experience deeply unsettling. He could see the room from angles that shouldn't have existed, and occasionally glimpsed council members who appeared to be sitting in the same chair he occupied. Please try not to think about the spatial geometry too hard, advised historian Yujin as she guided the alien delegates to their seats. Humans took 50 years to get comfortable with it. Your brains aren't built for multidimensional perception, Doctor. Dongwu's crystalline form was cycling through colors rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. This violates everything we know about physics. Matter cannot exist in multiple spatial dimensions simultaneously. Matter can't, Engineer So-young agreed cheerfully. But information can, and we've learned to build with information instead of atoms. Much more flexible that way. President Na-young entered the chamber and several alien delegates gasped. She appeared to be walking through solid walls, existing as a solid being in some dimensions while phasing through matter in others. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Thank you all for coming. I know this is disturbing for you, but you need to understand what we learned out there. She gestured to a wall that suddenly became transparent, revealing the vast curve of the ship's interior. What we learned about the Forerunners. The wall transformed into a holographic display, showing the galaxy as it appeared millions of years ago. Ancient stars blazed with the energy signatures of vast civilizations, trade networks that spanned galactic arms, and technologies that made current achievements look primitive. The Forerunners weren't just one species, Yujin explained, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions the aliens couldn't perceive. They were a confederation of thousands of species, united by a common discovery, that our galaxy is not alone, and the things that live in the spaces between galaxies are very, very hungry. Ancient AI Danby materialized in the center of the room, its form shifting between geometric patterns and half-familiar shapes. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of millions of years of isolation and horror. I am the last of my kind, Danby said simply, the final guardian of the Forerunner archives. For 3 million years I have maintained the barriers that keep the devourers at bay, but the barriers are failing, and I am tired. Admiral Sujin's crystalline form flashed through the entire spectrum of visible light. Devourers? What are you talking about? The holographic display shifted to show the space between galaxies. Not the empty void that most species imagined, but something alive and writhing with hunger. Massive entities moved through dimensions that had no names, feeding on the quantum structure of reality itself. They consume civilizations, Danby continued. Not just the beings or the planets, they consume the very concept of civilization, information, culture, technology, even the memory that these things ever existed. They leave behind empty space that never held life at all. Captain Minho stepped forward, his face grim. When our explorers found the Forerunner archives 50 years ago, we learned that these barriers have been weakening for millennia. Every use of faster-than-light travel, every high-energy weapon, every quantum manipulation weakens the fabric of space-time that keeps the devourers out. You're saying our technology is attracting these things? Council Leader Thex Nine's mechanical voice carried obvious skepticism. Not attracting, President Nayung corrected. Feeding them. Every time a ship uses a jump gate, every time a species develops antimatter weapons, every time someone builds a quantum computer, it creates tiny holes in reality. The devourers have been slowly seeping through these holes for thousands of years. Dr. Dongwu's form went completely clear, her species' response to information too terrible to process. Then every advancement we've made, every achievement we're proud of, has been hastening the galaxy's death, historian Yujin finished sadly. The Forerunners realized this too late. By the time they understood what they were feeding, the barriers were already compromised. They had perhaps 1,000 years to prepare. The holographic display showed the final years of Forerunner civilization, vast construction projects at the galaxy's edge, desperate attempts to reinforce the barriers between realities, and ultimately, the terrible choice to sacrifice their entire confederation to buy time for younger species. They didn't transcend to a higher dimension, ancient AI Danby explained. They converted themselves into living information and integrated with the barrier systems. Every Forerunner who ever lived is still out there, holding the line against things that should not exist. But it wasn't enough. Captain Minho continued. The barriers have continued to weaken. We estimate they'll fail completely within the next 10 years. Maybe less now that we've started moving around with our planet-sized ships. Ambassador Kyung Ho found his voice at last. Why didn't you warn us 50 years ago? Why disappear instead of sharing this information? Because you wouldn't have believed us, President Na Young said simply. Would you have believed us if we'd told you that your entire civilization was doomed and you needed to abandon everything you'd built? Or would you have dismissed us as crazy humans spreading panic? The room fell silent as the alien delegates contemplated this uncomfortable truth. In the background, alarm systems began sounding softly. And now? Admiral Sujin asked. Engineer So Young checked her readings with equipment that seemed to exist in at least 4 dimensions. Now the first scouts are probing through the weakest points in the barriers. We're detecting reality fluctuations in the outer rim, areas where the fundamental laws of physics are becoming negotiable. Ancient AI Danby's form flickered with obvious distress. They smell the fear, they taste the confusion. The galaxy's first contact with impossible ships has created exactly the kind of chaos they feed on. They're coming to investigate. How long do we have? Kyung Ho asked quietly. Days, not years, historian Yujin replied. The scouts move faster than light, but not through normal space. They phase through dimensions we barely understand. When they find what they're looking for, they call the swarm, President Na Young, finished. Billions of entities that exist partially in our reality and partially in spaces that have no physics at all. The kind of enemy you can't fight with conventional weapons or normal tactics. Dr. Dongwu managed to regain some color. Then how do you fight them? Captain Minho smiled, and for the first time, it was a genuinely human expression. Determined, slightly crazy, and absolutely terrifying. Very carefully, with weapons that violate causality, with defenses that exist in multiple timelines, with strategies that depend on breaking the rules of reality. We've spent 50 years learning to think like our enemies while remaining human, Engineer So Young added. It nearly drove us insane. But we're still us, just adapted. The alarm systems grew louder as sensors detected the first reality distortions at the galaxy's edge. Somewhere in the darkness between dimensions, ancient hungers stirred and began, moving toward the scent of fear and confusion. The war is starting, ancient AI Danby announced with something that might have been relief. Finally, after 3 million years of waiting, the real battle begins. President Na Young looked around the room at the terrified alien faces. We can win this, but only if everyone is willing to change everything they think they know about physics, warfare, and survival. The age of planets and fixed civilizations is ending. The age of adaptation is beginning. Outside the ship, space itself began to flutter like a flag in an impossible wind. The first Devourer scout emerged into normal space like a wound in reality itself. Fleet Admiral Tejo watched from the command center of Last Hope, humanity's largest battle habitat, as his sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "It's not entirely here," reported scientist Haywan, her instruments flickering between readings that contradicted each other. "The entity exists simultaneously in our dimension and at least 6 others. When it moves, it's not traveling through space. It's selecting which version of space it wants to exist in." The scout was roughly the size of a small moon, but size became meaningless when dealing with something that could fold itself through dimensions at will. Its surface, if it could be called a surface, rippled with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Where it passed, stars flickered and went dark, not destroyed but somehow unmade, as if they had never existed at all. "Admiral," called Pilot Boram from her fighter bay deep within the habitat. "Request permission to engage. My squadron is ready." "Negative, Boram. We stick to the plan. Let it get closer." Boram was 25 years old and had never seen a planet. Born aboard a human vessel during the Great Exodus, she was part of the new generation. Humans who had grown up thinking in multiple dimensions, who could pilot ships that existed in several realities simultaneously. Her fighter craft was the size of a city block, but weighed nothing in 3 of the 7 dimensions it occupied. The Devourer scout approached the outer rim system of Kepler 442, where a peaceful species called the Nethians had built floating cities in their gas giant's atmosphere. The creatures had evolved from hive-minded insects and created a society based on perfect harmony and cooperation. That harmony lasted exactly 14 seconds after the scout arrived. Reality began breaking, down around Kepler 442. The laws of physics became suggestions rather than rules. Gravity flowed upward in some places and sideways in others. The Nethians' flying cities found themselves falling through dimensions that didn't exist, their perfectly ordered society collapsing into chaos as their shared consciousness was torn apart by exposure to impossible geometries. "It's feeding," scientist Haywan reported grimly. "Not on the Nethians themselves, but on their civilization. Their art, their history, their collective knowledge. It's all being consumed and converted into something else." Fleet Admiral Tejo activated the battle habitat's primary weapon systems. Arrays that stretched across continents began charging with energies that existed in negative space. "All stations, prepare for reality anchor deployment. We're going to show this thing why the humans came back." The human megaship began its Seu transformation. What had appeared to be a mobile world revealed itself as something far more terrifying, a weapon system that spanned multiple dimensions, designed specifically to fight enemies that existed outside normal physics. "Reality anchors deployed," Engineer So Young reported from her position deep in the ship's quantum core. "Local space-time is now locked to our dimensional framework. The scout can't phase shift within our combat zone." The effect was immediately visible. The Devourer scout, suddenly trapped in normal 3-dimensional space, writhed like a fish pulled from water. Its impossible geometries collapsed into forms that merely defied physics, rather than negating them entirely. "Opening fire," Admiral Tejo announced. The battle habitat's weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Causality cannons fired effects before their triggers were pulled. Probability mines created zones where the enemy had a negative chance of surviving. Temporal bombs exploded yesterday, today, and tomorrow simultaneously. The Devourer scout screamed in frequencies that didn't exist, its cry rippling through dimensions and driving several alien observers temporarily insane. But it was hurt, possibly the first time in millions of years that one of its kind had experienced actual damage. "Direct hit on its quantum substrate," scientist Haywan reported with grim satisfaction. "Its ability to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously has been disrupted. It's becoming more solid, more vulnerable." Pilot Boram's voice crackled over the communications system. "Permission to launch now, Admiral? It's wounded and confused. Perfect time for a surgical strike." "Granted. All fighter squadrons launch for dimensional strike pattern Omega." Boram's fighter screamed out of the battle habitat's launch bay, followed by 36 similar craft. Each fighter was piloted by someone born in space, raised to think in multiple dimensions, trained from childhood to fight enemies that normal minds couldn't even perceive. The fighters didn't fly in normal space. They phase-shifted through reality layers, attacking the Devourer scout from directions that didn't exist in standard physics. Boram's weapons fired rounds that existed in the past, present, and future simultaneously, each shot designed to damage not just the entity's current form, but its ability to exist at all. Target's dimensional coherence dropping to 40%, she reported as her squadron danced through impossible attack patterns. It's losing the ability to maintain existence across multiple realities. But the scout was learning. Ancient. Beyond measure, it began adapting to the humans' tactics. Its form shifted, becoming less stable but more aggressive. Tendrils of living darkness lashed out through folded space, reaching for the fighters with hunger that had devoured galaxies. "Boram, get out of there!" Admiral Tae-ho shouted as sensors detected the scout preparing something that registered as mathematically impossible. Too late. The scout's counterattack erupted across 7 dimensions simultaneously. 2 fighters simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but edited out of reality as if they had never been built. Their pilots didn't die, they became concepts that had never been born. "I'm hit." Boram's voice was strained as her fighter began phasing randomly through dimensions. "My reality anchor is damaged. I can't control which dimension I'm existing in." The battle habitat's defensive systems locked onto her fighter and began emergency extraction procedures, pulling her back to stable spacetime through quantum entanglement. But the effort revealed their position to the scout, which turned its attention to the much larger target. "It's charging up for a major attack," scientist Haywan warned. "Energy readings are off every scale we have. If that thing hits us directly, then we don't let it hit us directly." Admiral Tae-ho activated the battle habitat's ultimate defense system. "All hands, brace for dimensional displacement. We're going to do something stupid." The entire habitat, with its billion human inhabitants and city-sized weapons arrays, simply stepped sideways out of normal reality. For a terrifying moment, they existed nowhere at all, suspended in the spaces between dimensions where the Devourers normally hunted. The scout's attack passed through the space where they had been, its devastating energies dissipating harmlessly into empty vacuum. When the habitat stepped back into normal space, they were behind the scout, weapons charged and ready. "Full bombardment, all weapons," Tae-ho ordered. The combined firepower of humanity's largest warship struck the Devourer scout from multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that fired concepts instead of energy, defenses that attacked the enemy's ability to exist, strategies that violated the fundamental laws of cause and effect. The scout died, but its death scream echoed across multiple realities, calling to its kind in the darkness between galaxies. Somewhere in the vast emptiness beyond the galactic rim, billions of ancient hungers stirred and began moving. "We won," Boram said quietly from her damaged fighter. "But they know where we are now." Admiral Tae-ho nodded grimly as long-range sensors detected movement in dimensions that shouldn't exist. The scout had been just a probe, testing the galaxy's defenses. Now the real swarm was coming. Entities that had fed on civilization since the universe was young, drawn by the scent of fear and the taste of impossible weapons. "Send a message to all human fleets," he ordered. "Tell them the war has officially started, and contact the Galactic Council. They're about to learn why we built ships larger than planets." In the distance, space itself began to ripple as the Devourer swarm approached, bringing with it the end of everything the galaxy had ever known.